Those who are old enough to remember the dawn of the 90s will no doubt remember the insane popularity of Street Fighter 2. The game was often credited for rejuvenating the arcade market and making a huge splash at home. In fact, it's often considered the most influential fighting game of all time, acting as a blueprint for every game from the genre that would follow. With the huge success of this seminal fighter, this of course would lead to the gaming market being flooded with an almost countless amount of copycats and imitators. While many of these would tread very familiar paths, others would end up trying much harder to carve out their own identity, putting their own spin on the genre. Speaking of games in the latter category, perhaps no video game falls into this bracket better than Street Fighter 2, a game that was made to be like Street Fighter 2 but had a sexy twist. What is perhaps most amusing though is just like the game that inspired it, it too would have countless games made after it that would tread a similar sultry route. So join me today as we look back at the history of some of these games and take a naughty peek at some of the most suggestive one-on-one fighters of the 90s and of course noughties. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. This is Street Fighter 2 and some of the even more ridiculous games that followed it. Yeah. Catherine! On occasion, don't you just love a suggestive video game? Take the alluring Catherine for example, a spicy, block-pulling puzzle-solving title from Atlas that doubles up as a cheating simulator. Using my Instant Gaming affiliate link via the pinned comment, you can try cheating yourself for a ludicrously low $4.97. Or if it's a fighting game you're looking for at a bargain bucket price, I can get you up to 90% off all of the modern fighting games, and many of the sprite-based classics too. Huge thanks to Instant Gaming for sponsoring today's video, and huge thank you to of course all of you for continuing to take advantage of their epic deals. Happy shopping! Ah yes, Street Fighter 2, the fighting game for grown-ups that features a roster made up of strictly scantily clad women wearing sexy outfits. But if racy sprite work does nothing for you, fear not, as those who persevere with this game of culture are rewarded with hard-earned images of attractive women wearing absolutely nothing. While it may perhaps sound like a novel concept of mixing lewd imagery with the emerging fighting game genre, why such an idea was concocted quickly begins to become a lot more clear when we look at the prehistory of this game. The story of raunchy video games can be traced back to at least 1982. That year would see the release of Custer's Revenge, a video game released in the United States for the Atari VCS that would receive an adult rating. The game would be deemed so offensive at the time that a group of female activists would organise a protest to try and get the game banned due to its controversial imagery. This would not be the last title of this ilk from the game's publishers though, and more would follow, such as Bachelor Party along with Beat 'em and Eat 'em. These games would generate a lot of negative media attention, but this would instead result in a Streisand effect leading to the games far exceeding sales expectations. On the other side of the Pacific, as we progress to the next generation of gaming, much to Nintendo's chagrin, the family-friendly Famicom would also begin receiving its fair share of provocative, unlicensed games. The publisher, who were most prolific for releasing games of this style, were a group known as Hacker International. A lot of their Famicom games would have one key element in common, rewarding hard-working player skills with images of women with no clothes on. Examples of these include the likes of Avi Poker, Miss Peach World, and Soap Panic, a game that was infamously released internationally under the title of Bubble Bath Babes, which I am sure all of you must already be familiar with. The man of culture behind all of this was a gentleman named Satoru Hagiwara, a hard-working Japanese entrepreneur and music producer who had his fingers both figuratively and probably literally in many different pies. His conquests would include publishing a monthly PC magazine known as The Hacker, with Hacker International being founded as an outlet for its writers' ideas. This would result in some cool products being produced, such as the Hacker Junior, an upgrade for the Famicom that provided composite video output with turbo controllers, and even more notoriously, disk hacker software that allowed its users to copy Famicom disk system disks without having to use one of Nintendo's authorized disk writer units. Hiroshi Yamauchi himself would oppose Hacker International's games, believing they would tarnish Nintendo's reputation, but that would not be enough to deter the rogue publisher from contracting development studios over in Taiwan to produce these ludicrous games on their behalf. Hacker International games for the Famicom were usually available in Japan via mail order from magazines, included within the pages of Takuma's Shoten's Family Computer magazine. It is said that after the advertisements were posted in its pages, their relationship with Nintendo turned so sour that it was threatened completely. This led to Takuma's top executives travelling to Nintendo to apologise to Yamauchi in person. What a crazy tale this one is turning out to be. While Nintendo were clearly no fan of Hacker International and their highly cultured games, NEC with their PC Engine console brand were far more tolerant of Satoru Hagiwara's motley crew's shenanigans. Games for the PC Engine and PC Engine CD would be published under Hacker International's Game Express brand, and NEC would even go as far as thanking the group for assisting with producing extra console sales. PC Engine hardware would receive over a dozen Game Express games, and amongst them would of course be the coveted Street Fighter 2. You see, from Hacker International's perspective, everything about this game made sense, as not only would they be relying on their trademark selling point of provocative imagery, but they would be simultaneously cashing in on the success of the Street Fighter 2 craze. If the group had any opportunity to make good money, now was that opportunity. But the only problem was that making a fighting game was no easy feat, and certainly not a genre of video games that the company had experience with. To circumvent this lack of expertise, as usual Hacker International would turn to Taiwan, whereby they would license a fighting game engine from Computer Entertainment Incorporated. This engine had been used previously to create the game Super Fighter, a 1993 title that had been developed and published to run on the MS-DOS format. Unlike other platforms, fighting games would not be common on the PC Engine, so outside of an awesome conversion of Street Fighter 2 itself, Street Fighter 2 found itself in an ideal position, facing limited competition. So without further ado, let's dive in further into the lunacy that is this game. Progressing past the menu screen, players have the option to play as one of 6 different alluring fighters. Once a heroine has been chosen, in typical fighting game fashion, players must then run a gauntlet of 2 out of 3 round encounters in an effort to defeat each femme fatale in this game. We will get to discussing the roster and the fighting mechanics of this game in a little more depth very shortly, but first, let's touch on how Hacker International's not suitable for work trope is worked into this one. You see, after the first round, players are met with a wink and a message from a scantily clad woman, who one can only assume is promising to take their clothes off if the player is victorious. Winning 2 out of 3 falls then delivers on such a promise. However, I am not showing you myself, as you did not earn such a reward yourself. After all, that's only fair. As for the selectable roster of fighters themselves, we have Bella, who wears a hood resembling a Hulk, who has moves like an air projectile known as the Twister Storm, along with a dive kick known as the Thunder Drop. We then have Martha, who has a mohawk and a sort of glam rock image, who has a fireball projectile, a knee drop, and a hair flip special. Further to this we have Medusa, who looks almost Poison-esque. She is capable of multiple projectiles and can even electrocute opponents in the same way that Blanca does. Amongst the even more ridiculous is Amanda. She has a funky rainbow projectile, but even more ridiculous, get this, she has a boob dash and a boob lariat. Which sadly, to protect my revenue, I am going to need to have my editor censor. This game is ridiculous. The roster also gives us Yuki, who is essentially this game's answer to Chun-Li, who is capable of pulling off an energy wave and performs a very punishable somersault. And most tantalising of all, she can pull off a nude uppercut. Just wow. Finally, we have Nina, who fights in alluring lingerie, and while Yuki looks more like Chun-Li, Nina on the other hand is capable of emulating the first lady of fighting games' multi-hit lightning kick, as well as being able to utilise a lightning whip as well. Rather surprisingly, there are some depthy breakdowns online explaining how to perfect your skills playing this game, such as an insanely detailed mechanical guide which can be found on Game FAQs written by Kyo. They describe the game as being held together by gum, but that doesn't mean it isn't possible to make sense of it. Street Fighter 2 is a fighting game whereby light, medium and heavy attacks are all possible, with light attacks being the most reliable due to their speed. The other buttons, on the other hand, are best utilised to pull off the game's special moves. Blocks, throws and crouching are all also possible in the game, with throws not working on a character if they're crouching down. In matches, when they take enough blows, like in Street Fighter 2, characters can also enter a dizzy state, which lasts about 4 seconds and cannot be broken off. The game is floaty looking, lacks refinement and has a control scheme that can result in slow and choppy play. But let's be serious for a moment. Did anyone buy Street Fighter 2 because they were simply seeking out the most playable fighting game? I highly doubt it. Those who have the testicular fortitude to make it to the end of the game are rewarded with a slideshow showing all the women in the game taking off their clothes yet again, resulting in an ending delivering exactly what gamers paid for. So that just about rounds things up as far as this fighting game goes. Basically, it's a substandard fighting game that has a few naughty bits here and there. As for Hagiwara, the mastermind behind pushing these games, on GameDeveloper.com in 2011, he documents in an interview what motivated him to have developed these unlicensed games. He reminisces about the 80s and early 90s, stating that, at around that time I had a lot of negative emotions towards the collusion and under-the-table agreements publishers had with each other. Even so, none of the products we made broke any laws, he said. The music industry ran under a set of well-defined laws, so perhaps that experience affected me a little too. But either way, I didn't think to myself that we wanted to break the law of our products. Because they were weak games, a lot of them went down the adult track. We called them semi-adult. We established the Games Express brand near the start of the PC Engine's life. I liked the hacker brand because it had sort of a bad boy image, but by that time it was starting to get too associated with criminal behaviour, so I felt like it needed to change. Hacker earned a lot of its fans during the PC Engine days, and we sold a surprisingly large amount of games. While Hacker International or Game Express, or whatever you want to call them, published unlicensed games for so long, this all changed for the company with the release of a Sony PlayStation. Here the company would rebrand once more, this time as Map Japan. But the real question is, why did Hagiwara have a change of heart? He states, the biggest reason was that I liked how Sony was doing things. The PlayStation basically destroyed the game distribution scheme that was in place when it launched. They had a stated goal of creating a completely new type of game business, and I was really impressed by that. Once we started developing games though, other makers got into the scene. You started to see 2,800 yen re-releases, and worst of all, I stopped being interested in games, so that's why we quit the business. I wanted to wrap that up while we could still do so, and try something new. After releasing 15 games for the Sony PlayStation, Map Japan would finally close her business in 2001. But those who are familiar with their strange games will never forget the controversial legacy that the Rogue Group left behind. Despised by Nintendo and celebrated by perverts everywhere, Hacker International have left behind a hilarious mark. From Bubble Bath Babes to Street Fighter 2 to the hilarious Final Fantasy parody known as High Leg Fantasy. Hagiwara certainly walked his own path in gaming and left on his own terms too. For this reason, next time you play one of these redonkulous games, have a think about what they did for the industry in their fight against the Japanese gaming giants' dirty, under the table collusion. There is more to this tale than a few provocative pictures. As influential as Street Fighter 2 was, though, just 1 year after its release, another smash hit fighting game would hit the market, the iconic and graphically violent Mortal Kombat. Apart from introducing the fatality system, which many other fighters would imitate, it would also further popularise digitised graphics. Sure, we had seen this in video games before, such as in Pit Fighter for example, but this was the first time we'd witnessed digitised actors placed in a Street Fighter 2 style one-on-one fighter. The money that Mortal Kombat would generate would see the title receive an almost endless amount of copycats in its own right, such as Ultra Vortec for the Atari Jaguar for example. While the majority of games that were produced that would opt for such a graphical style would see release in the early to mid-90s, hilariously Karate Babes would not hit store shelves until 2002, an era whereby the majority of gamers had moved on to hardware such as the PlayStation 2, Nintendo GameCube and Microsoft Xbox. So, why does this primitive looking game exist? And why was it created? Well, Bikini Karate Babes was developed and published by Creative Edge Studios, an entity who were based out of Virginia. While the company's website doesn't appear to have much information on it anymore, according to Vice.com, their services were not just restricted to video game development, but you could also hire them to duplicate your old VHS tapes or recruit them to film your wedding. Thus meaning when it comes to Creative Edge Studios, this company was hardly Capcom or Midway when it came to size, experience and scope within the industry. Creative Edge Studios has carved out a cultured fandom indeed, which was in part thanks to the ridiculous Bikini Karate Babes. Speaking of old forums, having a browse at artstechnica.com posts from the year that the game would see release, it seems that many internet users felt that the concept of the title seemed so ludicrous that they felt that Bikini Karate Babes would never be released, and all talk around the game was no more than a joke. History now shows us though that these forum posters were wrong, because as you can see, Bikini Karate Babes very much exists. As you can see, all of the action in this game was created using digitised actors, with the capturing process being directed by a man known as Travis Biggs. In an old interview, it is said that the reason as to why this title was developed was in order to poke fun at the state of fighting games of the day, which personally I could see would have made sense in say 1993, but crazily as mentioned earlier, this game didn't hit the market until 2002. By that point in time, video games with full motion video scenes involving actors and digitised capture like this was pretty much tropes from an already bygone era, but here we were. Building on the inspiration for the game, it is said that this was Creative Edge Studios' response to the industry's fighting games, which regularly featured women characters wearing increasingly revealing clothes, while male characters on the other hand would often wear full body armour. While there is certainly some truth to this statement, when we consider titles such as Dead or Alive by the point of Karate Babes' release was already 6 years old. In fact, the entire fighting game genre was beginning to cool off, with it not being long before the likes of Capcom would take a break from releasing new fighting games completely. So, if such satire was going to be made around the genre, 2002 seems like it was a little late for that. Street Fighter 2, which we referenced at the beginning of this upload, which already had an all-female cast of scantily dressed characters, came out an entire 9 years earlier, thus meaning that the joke that was Karate Babes was far from an original idea, but rather contributing to an already nearly decade-long legacy of purposely smutty fighting games. Bikini Karate Babes was one of many fighting games of this ilk, but I guess the digitised capturing as far along as 2002 at least helped this one stand out. In extra behind the scenes content that would come with the original game, all of the women who starred in this affair would take part in interviews, explaining their experiences working on such a game. Reading through all of these, it sounds like the process of finding these women draws a lot of parallels with how they would recruit female wrestlers to train and be a part of Glow. It all kind of reminds me of the Netflix series about that wrestling promotion, which I love. Thuong Tran, who plays Chen Wu in the game for example, states,
"Before the audition, I had seen the advertisement for it at my school. There was a flyer for it and I got real excited. I said, hey, this is something that's a chance of a lifetime. Why not give it a go, you know?"
Claudia, who played Voluptuous, reports to us that
the place that I was I don't know, for lack of a better word, discovered. I don't want to use that, but I was working at a concession stand at a dance competition, and these two guys, one of them happened to be Travis, came up to me and asked me if I wanted to be in a video game. And to be honest, I mean, he knew I didn't think it was legit, but after a while, you know, I came over and did some research and seemed like a really interesting and fun project, so it was different. I mean, I can honestly say that something like that has never happened to me before, so I was kind of honoured.
Becky Torm, who played Zarya, added,
When I came to the audition, my agency sent me and I wasn't really sure what it was for. I was told to wear tight form-fitting clothes, so I did. And when I got there, there was lots of girls there, and I was one of the first ones in the room. And when I was out, I didn't feel bad or good about the audition. I wasn't sure that I'd got it, but I didn't feel bad about it either. I kind of actually forgot about it, and when they said I got it, I was like, wow. And I didn't know like how big of a game it was, or how well I'd really done out of how many girls until I got here.
The lady who played Kalada adds,
I heard about the auditions through an advertisement at one of the local gyms that I train in. The reason why I decided truthfully to try out was my husband is a big computer game player, and that's kind of what sparked my interest.
After the gorgeous ladies of Bikini Karate Babes had been assembled, the production shoots for the game would begin, with some of the women reporting that it was more intense and with more technical difficulties than they expected.
You know, filming and just everything. The action sequence is not as easy as one might think. I mean, there's a lot going into it. You know, my character and Athena, we did our shot once everything was put together. It looked like she really kicked my ass, but she didn't. Okay, during the shooting, we had a couple of technical difficulties, especially with our bikinis. With a lot of the girls and myself being a little bit, heavier on top. Well, you know, a couple of times we had to redo the shot just because we were just popping out left and right. But, there was, people that, and Travis as well, that made us feel comfortable. And saying that, hey, it's done professionally. They're going to edit things out, make it look like, no one ever saw it. But of course, there was a little bit of edginess in there. That's why they're called creative edge, I guess.
The woman who played Zarya would add,
It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of girls here, and all weekend shoots we got to watch movies and stuff like while the other girls shooting, and help each other work with each other to make up combos and moves. So they were all different, and it was just a really good experience for so many girls to get along so well.
Many of the ladies would have a lot of praise for Travis Biggs regarding the shoot, including the woman who played Athena, adding,
Travis went the extra mile to make us feel more comfortable about our scenes, and he talked things out with the other characters, or that's what I saw. I think that sometimes, he might have pushed us a little bit, but it was just to get things done and to get things the way he wanted it. Because I think he has a vision of how this game is supposed to come out, and he's just trying to put it all together, and I think that once it's done because of him, it's all gonna look great. It wasn't like he didn't really want to try and shut us out. He explained everything to us and where he thought it was going and his opinions on everything. I felt really open to ask him anything I wanted to about the game or what was going on. I felt as though he was giving me a clear and concise answer as to his knowledge of everything at the time.
The actress behind Persephone enjoyed the shoot too, adding,
One of the things that I like about the game is how women are empowered, and we have so much power and we can do whatever we want. My character Persephone is kind of quiet and reserved, and that's kind of how I am. I really enjoyed working with all the girls on this. We had a lot of fun. We got to know each other. We'd bring picture albums on the long shoot days and share our friends and family and talk about boyfriends and everything like that. I just think we all got really close in a really short amount of time, and it was a lot of fun.
Samantha, who played Gemini, comments on working with green screen and how impressed she was seeing the finished product, commenting,
Because originally when we were watching it, each person up there, it was like a green background, and all you can see is this green background, and you have absolutely no idea how it's going to fit into the actual background that the character plays in. So when I actually saw it, I was incredibly amazed.
That is such a Samantha thing to say.
So while Samantha and many of your other ladies were highly impressed with this game, what was the final product actually like? Let's try and break this down further. The game opens up with glorious full motion videos showing the women having choreographed fight scenes in woodlands, by lakes and in all manner of beautiful locations in the great outdoors. Past this point we reach a menu screen reminiscent of that of a naughty DVD that appears to give players a range of different play options. But since this is a fighting game, let's talk about the main arcade mode. As is usual, you can choose your fight from the roster screen, offering up some tantalising choices. Once your choice has been made, the game's glorious action commences. The best way to describe what can be experienced past this point is, well, interesting. PCGamer.com put it perfectly when they referred to this title as Mortit's Kombat, as essentially that's exactly what the game looks like. The game is both terrible and titillated in equal measures, meaning that players can waggle their joysticks in shame as they play through this one. On the surface, this video game draws parallels with many other fighters, with each character who is named after a different goddess from mythology having their own set of moves and combos. These can be performed by combining directional inputs with standard attack buttons to perform specials and other manoeuvres. However, the game's poor controls make this easier said than done. Special moves include the likes of Thalia's Tickle Grab, Lucina's Mystic move, which has her lowering her top and firing a laser from her bazookas, and Venus's Grab, in which she strips her opponent of her clothing, making her too embarrassed to want to continue. Tasteful stuff indeed. Amusingly, in some cases, you can even see the green outline around the fighters, where the devs behind this one didn't effectively light the production studio properly when capturing the moves for the game. Either that, or in the post-production process, the chroma keying wasn't carried out properly. Either way, in some ways, it adds to the bizarre guerrilla charm of this silly game. Thankfully for the perverts out there who purchased this one back in the day, the game would have featured a somewhat killer app for them, as fighters can perform moves that include the likes of one woman popping off the bra of another to then use it as a whip. With regards to capturing the footage for these parts of the game, thankfully I've managed to dig up some thoughts and opinions from the actresses involved. The lady behind Chen Wu comments,
Yeah, there were some parts in the movie that require partial nudity or full nudity, but and I read about that in the contract, but I didn't think that I would be one of them to do it. So basically, that I am a little shy, but that's definitely what he wanted. That makes it a little bit more just edgy and definitely what people want. They want something a little bit more shocking, I'm sure. For example, nobody expects you to, use your top as a weapon, but that's what makes it so creative and unique. It's just something that's just kind of exciting and, just wows the player who's gonna be playing and he's gonna want to play more,
Samantha adds,
Some of the movements would have a tendency to be a little exposed, but I was a little hesitant in the beginning, but as we went along with it, it really was handled in a professional manner. There truly wasn't anything exposed for a great period of time or anything in any manner that made us feel uncomfortable.
The actress behind Aphrodite adds,
There is some nudity in the game, and I think that it was difficult for all the characters, including me, to get kind of used to the environment. Trying to perform as best as we could something that we've never really done before. I know I haven't.
Everybody's got a price.
When finally released in 2002, the Bikini Karate Babes would be utterly obliterated by critics, with the title seeing some of the worst reception online I have seen for any video game ever. So let's cover some nuggets. IGN have given the game a bloody good paddling in the past reporting, stating, "What I can decipher of the extremely brief cutscenes, some scantily clad women are trying desperately to take over a rather pleasant city park. The girl with the laser shooting is content with shooting up rocks, while others are trying to spread passion throughout the island. But all that takes an irrelevant backseat to play, which actually has the uncanny ability to ruin life itself. Your tadpoles will die if you buy this. Unlike most other acceptable games released in the last 20 or 30 years, Victory is all about having superhuman endurance. It's necessary to endure the graphics, the sound, and the control. Hey, at least these graphics are fantastic. There are girls and they have girl parts. Sure, they move like freaked out puppets injected with poisoned amphetamines, occasionally reverting to an eerie, frozen state, and they jitter all over the damn place like an epileptic in an anime convention. But a few of them are pretty and exotic. Aside from the horrible control, mind-numbing audio, baffling everything, and complete unadulterated insanity, this is a terrific game that should be immediately purchased by anyone with a lobotomy or currently in the process of getting a professionally done or self-performed lobotomy. Bikini Karate Babes does teach us one thing though. If you have a video camera, a backyard, a terrible idea, and $112 to blow, you too can get girls to wear bathing suits and do things like fight and lay down. IGN would grade the game just 1.5 out of 10, the lowest I have ever seen on the website, but at least their review about the game was entertaining, I suppose. The game would be buried by the media of the time, with the title largely getting very negative reviews like this. While many journalists found this title unbearably bad, according to Creative Edge Studios, none of this actually mattered, as the game was a solid seller for them anyway. Let's be honest, no one is purchasing a game like this for its gameplay quality to begin with. In fact, I am fully inclined to believe them as well, because following the release of this game, it would later go on to receive not one, but 2 sequels. However, these are potential stories for another time. There is no doubt that no matter how silly many people think Bikini Karate Babes is, there is clearly some sort of market for this franchise, and these sort of games in general, which is why the likes of Street Fighter 2 will go on to receive sequels as well. More games I'd like to talk about this channel in the future too. So all in all, I think I can conclude that Bikini Karate Babes is both silly and ridiculous, but it is a weird fighting game that I am glad exists. Thank God that in between copying VHS tapes and filming people's weddings, that the fine people over at Creative Edge Studios found time to make this one. Who could possibly live without it? When it comes to these controversial titles, my search has led me to the existence of a game that has a reputation so poor that it makes the former titles that I covered look like all-time greats in comparison. With that said, it's time to reach down into the depths of hell so we can see what all the fuss is about. When we consider the profane content that was available on television at the time, then why should we have expected the world of video games to have been any different? Well, quite frankly, it wasn't, with games like the Mortal Kombat series becoming the subject of a series of major controversies and even court cases. The outrage generated would lead to the introduction of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, but all this publicity would just increase the game's sales. According to Superdata Research CEO Just Van Drunen, because of the obvious rift between gamers on the one hand and adult society on the other, Mortal Kombat set the tone for what constituted gamer culture. So with a perceived audience apparently existing who craved violence and more adult-orientated content, a number of Mortal Kombat copycats would emerge, with developers looking to capitalise on this trend. As discussed earlier in the video, we have already looked at the likes of Karate Bikini Babes, a fighting game that also utilised digitised actresses, but didn't hit the market until 2002. Believe it or not, 6 years before this title existed, another video game had been created that also attempted to combine smut, fighting, and digitised madness, the infamous Catfight, a game that would be boldly marketed as the ultimate female fighting game. However, as you can probably see from the gameplay present right now, Ultimate certainly could not have meant the best in this one's case. The ultimate in terrible fighting games is definitely more apt in this instance, which raises the next question: who was behind this craziness in the first place? This 1996 PC game was developed by a studio known as Phantom Card, but more interestingly, it was published by a company known as Atlantean Interactive, who were apparently a front for Vivid Entertainment. Yes, that Vivid Entertainment, one of a handful of studios that dominate the United States naughty video production sector. Thankfully, through the internet magic of the Wayback Machine, we can still access the Atlantean website, with them claiming on the site that they are proud to bring to us a selection of distinguished CD-ROM games for your PC or Mac that are sure to hold your interest for hours on end, with links to information of titles such as Island of Peril, to Lords of Tantras and more. But most importantly in this case, let's see what they have to say about Catfight. The page states, join 11 of the fiercest female warriors from across the ethers as they battle it out for the ultimate power of the universe. Watch the head-to-head fighting assault blaze its way to your screen, with the hottest women in games engaging in the most violent fighting techniques imaginable. Some of the things you must endure are disembowelment, decapitation, and worse. It's the ultimate life versus death struggle where you must pulverise your opponent in 8 awesome arenas to survive. Here is your chance to claim your place next to the most awesome women in the galaxy. For those brave souls out there who have enough testicular fortitude to power this game on, prospective players are first exposed to the crude Atlantean Interactive Games logo, which I must say looks god tier in comparison to the abomination that is the Phantom Card logo. It looks like something created and proudly printed out by a computer skillless primary school teacher and stuck on the classroom wall in 1996, so we are off to the worst start possible here. Moving past the ghastly menu, we are introduced to something far more interesting: Catfight's intriguing roster select screen. I mean, just look at some of these women. Mortal Kombat, eat your heart out. I have to learn more. After choosing fighters, it's all downhill from this moment as players journey down into the depths of gaming hell, experiencing one of the worst fighting games in all of existence. I guess we won't be seeing this one played competitively at EVO anytime soon. This embarrassingly choppy game with an unresponsive control system is dreadful in almost every conceivable way possible, with little reason for us to celebrate this video game beyond its pure absurdity. Everything about this one screams amateur and, well, rubbish. The game seems to have had 2 development goals in mind, the first of them clearly being to emulate Mortal Kombat, which is illustrative through the choice of graphical style, some of the costumes, and heavy use of blood with many of the game's animations. And when I say animations, I am using the phrase in the loosest possible sense. The second goal, especially when we take who was behind this game into question, I would imagine would have been to make a video game that was gratifying, if you know what I mean. But shamefully, the team appear to have fouled on that front too. The ugly, digitised graphics are a far cry from being even remotely attractive for players, meaning that no matter how hard gamers waggle their joysticks when playing this one, the title is unlikely to generate the primal desired response that the devs would have intended with this one. Ooh. Karate Bikini Babes would pick up where Catfight fouled a few years later. Other amusing factoids regarding this game is that it was apparently falsely advertised as the first all-female fighting game. Information that, as you know for sure, is a massive fat lie in itself, as the likes of Street Fighter 2 had already been in existence for a few years, and this was just another game programmed for the same subgenre. Speaking of linking this one to other games, it does hide one particular cool Easter egg, in that the female ninja in the game, known as Che Li, is portrayed by the very same martial arts actress in this digitised game as that of Katana, Melina and Jade from Mortal Kombat 2. In this instance, they are all played by Katalin Zamaya, a lady who owned a fitness club whereby Mortal Kombat creators Ed Boon and John Tobias trained. Her younger brother, Alex, who happened to be a huge Mortal Kombat fan, would approach the two gentlemen about putting his sister in the game. While on this tangent, she would also be digitised to appear in multiple unreleased fighting games, such as The Realm Fighters, which was intended to show up on the Atari Jaguar, and Chi Yong, which was meant to come out on the Sony PlayStation. Despite its ridiculously low quality, unfortunately no one seems to have been smart enough to have shelved Catfight, so this blotch on gaming history remains in existence to this day. Unsurprisingly, the press who would be exposed to this game over the years have been far from impressed with what they have discovered. Game Rankings, for example, rates the game just 8.67%, with their score being accumulated from 3 different magazine publications. Thankfully, the Wayback Machine grants us access to one of these to laugh at, with CD Mag awarding the game 0 out of 5 stars, with their review simply describing the game as Mortal Kombat minus any male fighters and gameplay, and the fun. The review heavily mocks the game's AI and difficulty levels, describing 2 settings to choose from: Brain Dead, where the computer doesn't fight back at all, and Butt Kicker, where the computer appears to be incredibly good, until you realise that 1, the response time for your controls is pathetic, and 2, all you have to do is stay in a crouch and kick repeatedly position to defeat your opponents with ease. The bemused reviewer in 1996 would summarise his thoughts stating, "Catfight enters entirely new realms of badness. Aside from the control problems, you have bad gameplay, bad animation, bad looking characters, bad background graphics, bad background music and bad sound effects, which makes for a pretty bad game." GameSpot would review this one too, giving it 1.6 out of 10, calling it without a doubt the worst computer game ever released, adding the worst thing about Catfight, and believe me, that's a hefty accomplishment, is that the gameplay is just so damn bad. I'll sleep easier knowing there will never be a Catfight 2. Adding to all of this, retrospectively in 2010, PC Gamer ranked Catfight as the 7th worst game ever made, describing it as so bad that being caught mass into it would actually be less embarrassing than being caught playing it. Earlier in this video, I said that one publication back in the day referred to this game as the most sexist game ever created. This was the Daily Pennsylvanian, a student-run non-profit daily newspaper. In an extensive article explaining how the writer believed networking is redefining the standards of PC gaming, the piece covers how fun it is to play the Doom games with friends. The writer later goes on to begin praising the high quality of the gameplay that can be found within Duke Nukem, describing it as having the best weapons for multiplayer, some truly intriguing levels, and a lot of nifty options. This praise, though, soon degenerates into criticism, deriding the title as the 3rd most sexist game that has ever been created, with them going on to clarify that they believe Virtual Valerie 2 is the 2nd most sexist game, with, you guessed it, Catfight being their perceived most sexist game ever made. Now, to be completely transparent with you, despite this title being a truly awful fighting game that poorly tried to cash in on the success of Mortal Kombat, as terrible as this one was, I can't really see how it can be seen as any more sexist than many other products of that time. The game was certainly designed to titillate and appeal to the male gaze, but let's be honest, the people behind this one even failed on that front. In this day and age, many people claim that scantily clad women are empowering to the gender, not sexist, with 99% of women with OnlyFans accounts, for example, peddling this exact narrative. So keeping this in mind, let me know in the comment section what you think regarding this topic, and which game does deserve the accolade of being referred to as the most sexist game ever created. Don't forget, you can get up to 90% off of thousands of games like Catherine, Street Fighter 6, and many more by simply using my affiliate instant gaming link via the pinned comment. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all again soon. Happy shopping, and cheerio.